Okay, so we've been talking about verbs. Verbs are the heart of a sentence. They tell us where the action is, what's happening, the event part of a sentence. Now we're going to talk about the characters. Who are the people and things doing stuff or having stuff done to them? Who are the nouns? A noun is a person, place, or thing. And what are the adjectives? He was a hairy bear, a very scary bear. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the characters now, the nouns and the adjectives of a Hebrew sentence. How does Hebrew do them? Well, let's dig in, shall we? So a lot of it is similar. You have subjects and objects, but some of it's different. Like, for example, Hebrew nouns have gender. Now, if you've studied Spanish or French, you understand this. It's kind of a mostly arbitrary thing that certain languages do, and Hebrew does it too. So, for example, you can have a masculine word, melech. Hopefully you can begin to pronounce letters. Melech is a masculine word, and it means king. Now, in this case, there is a correlation between the gender and what the word is about. A king is a man, because a queen, malka, is a woman. And so melech is masculine and queen is feminine. That makes sense because king and queen are gendered. Now, a lamp is harder to, what is a lamp? And yet in Hebrew, pretty much every word has a gender. And so we know from Spanish or French or these other languages that it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And some people overread it, like they're like Sophia, Kokma in Hebrew. Kokma is feminine, and therefore they thought of wisdom as a feminine deity. No, they didn't. That's just, it's gender. It doesn't mean anything. And so you don't want to overread gender in Hebrew or any other language for that matter. But melech is the blah, nothing added form, and it means king, and it's masculine. And then malka, which takes the same letters, mem, lamed, kaf, and adds a kamatz hey to it at the end, and now it's not a king, it's a queen. Kamatz hey tends to be a feminine ending that Hebrew added on to the words, like kokma, wisdom, has a kamatz hey on it. It's a feminine word. Doesn't mean that they thought of wisdom as a feminine god or anything like that. It's just, wisdom is feminine. Don't say, they thought of women as being wise. They probably didn't think of women as being wise, but you get it. Gender doesn't necessarily relate to sex in that sense, but words had gender. And kamatz hey was a feminine ending. You don't have to know the endings because we're using the tools in this sequence here, a biblical Hebrew for the novice. And so you don't have to have it all memorized. The code will tell you that it's FS, feminine singular, for example. Okay, so gender is one thing that Hebrew nouns do. They also have number. Now, this will be fairly familiar because we do this in English. You have singular words and you have plural words. Now, if you did want to memorize the endings, melech is the masculine singular. It has nothing added. Malka is the feminine singular, FS. It has a kamatz hey added. Again, the code will tell you. Here's the plural. The masculine plural ending is im, hirk yod mem. Im is like Elohim. The word for God is a masculine plural form. It's puzzling. Why is it masculine plural? Well, read the book that goes along with this video and course, and we talk a little bit about that. And then holam vav is the feminine plural ending, queens. So malakim is kings. We add an S in English, and malakot is queens, the feminine plural. So this would be FP in the code. This would be MP in the code. This malka would be FS, feminine singular in the code, and then melech would be MS, masculine singular in the code. Now, Hebrew did have a dual, believe it or not. This is two things, like Shemayim. Why was Shemayim dual? I don't know, maybe they thought of the heavens above the firmament and the skies below the firmament. I'm not sure, but there are several Shemayim. There are several dual words. Face, panayim, is you got two faces, this face and this face. Eyes, azayin, again, ears. Maybe I did I do ears? Ayin is eyes, and ozen, I think, is ears. Anyway, because you got two of them. You got two eyes. So mayim, believe it or not, water is dual. Maybe they're thinking the water's below the firmament and the water's above the firmament. But so this is dual is something we don't do in English, don't do it in Spanish, and don't do it in French. And in fact, Anyway, I'm not even going to try to think of other languages that do dual, but singular, plural, number. You got gender in Hebrew, and you've got number in Hebrew. Wait, there's more. A third one is what's called state. Sorry, that was a little weird. Let me clean it up. So the normal state, the one that's like we think of in English, is the absolute state. Like davar here, word, it's in the absolute state. It's just normal. But there was something that I'll talk about in a slide yet to come called the construct state. The construct state basically sucked all the air out of the vowels. So a kamatz, which is a long A, became a shava. I've lost all my breath. A long A kamatz becomes a patak. I'm running out of air. So the way you went from an absolute to a construct in the simplest form was just to suck all the air of the vowels. Sometimes you can't tell. There was a little accent that sometimes said, I go with the word that comes after me. Read the chapter in the book, Biblical Hebrew for the Novice. But when you had a word in the construct state, it added the word of after it. Isn't this a fun game? Word and then word of. Again, other languages don't do that. This is how they did of. There was no word for of, really, in Hebrew. If you wanted to use of, you just sucked all the air out of the vowels or put it in the construct state to do that. Again, you don't have to know this because the code is going to have a little C there that says construct, and either on Blue Letter Bible or in interlinearbible.org, the code is going to tell you when a word is construct. Common sense kind of tells you too. You kind of know, hey, I think that an of feels like an of goes here. We can also talk about things that are definite. That is, that when it has the word the on the front. So like ha davar, if davar is word, ha davar is the word. Notice it is a prefix that goes right onto it. It's crashes into it. Hey patak doubling. That is the normal way of doing the in Hebrew. And isn't this fun? It's a fun game. You can in fact get out your Hebrew Bible or go to interlinearbible.org, kind of look around, see if you can find some hey patak doubling. That's the article. That's the word the. So nouns have gender, masculine or feminine. They have number, singular, plural, or dual. And they have state. They can be absolute, they can be construct, they can be definite. All right, these are the major categories of nouns. Let me talk a little bit more detail about the construct state. Not the state of Indiana, but the state of construct. So when a word is in the construct state, the word of comes after the word. This is a little weird, but think of it as a game. Have fun with it. Isn't this fun? Who thought that a language would do something like that? But when a word is in the construct state, the word of pops out of nowhere, out of it. It's a fun game. Now, the definiteness of a chain, this of this of this, the glory of the loveliness of God. Actually, Ephesians has some of these this of this of this, and it bespeaks of somebody who was a Jew who knew Aramaic, because that's kind of an Aramaic Hebrew thing to do, to say this of this of this. And so, but whether or not it was the blank of the blank of the blank always depended on the last word. If the last word in a construct chain is definite, then all the words in a construct chain are definite. You weren't allowed to put the article on any of the early words in a chain, but you could put it on the last word. And if the last word was definite, if it was a personal name, or if it had a his on it, or something like that if the last word was definite, then all the words in the construct chain are definite. So the definiteness of a chain depends on the last word. You can't interrupt the chain. Can't put a preposition in the middle. It's a this of this of this of this. That's just the rules of how Hebrew does construct chains. So that's a little bit about construct. It can also get a little weird, like great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of His holiness. So this is Har Kadshi, mountain of His holiness. But what is it really saying? It's literally mountain of my holiness. I actually hear Yod here as my, mountain of my holiness. But probably it means my mountain of holiness. But you couldn't interrupt the chain. That's the rule. You can't put a my in the middle. You could only put it at the end. So mountain of my holiness means my mountain of holiness. It's a game. You got to learn to play the game. So Hebrew, this is one of the things that makes Hebrew so fun, because it's just not like English, not at all. Okay, let's talk a little bit about pronominal suffixes, shall we? Just to go back for a second, that E that we saw on the end here is called a pronominal suffix, a pronoun. His Holiness. Remember, mountain of my holiness in this particular case. So the Hierarch Yod is my. And you're like, what? You can't do that. Well, it's their language. They can if they want. And so they put these suffixes, these things on the ends of the words that could be a pronoun. It could be my. In other cases, it could be me. It could be his, her, their. All these different things, they're called pronominal suffixes. And so there are pronouns. Hebrew did have pronouns that could stand on their own, like he and she. In fact, who meant he. I mean, that's kind of strange. Who is he? And then he meant she. What? You say Hebrew is the language where who is he is she, me is who, and dog is fish. Anyway, so the word who is the Hebrew word for he, and then the word he is the Hebrew word for she. These are called independent pronouns because they stand on their own, just like in English, he, she, and so forth. However, they had these suffixes, like my holiness. The Hierarch Yod meant my, and they can be possessive, as in my holiness. But they could also be like the objects of verbs. To love me. You could put me on the end of to love, and it would be an object suffix. But all of them are pronouns that you attach to the end of a word. Isn't this language crazy? It's why it's fun. It's completely different from anything we do in English in so many ways. And so you could put pronouns on the ends of words. Now, I've already mentioned the word the. This is called the article. Don't ask why. That's just what they call it. The word the in Hebrew is called the article. Well, actually, in any language, we call it the article. But the is what we mean when we talk about the article. The normal form, as I told you, is you put a hey on the front, a patak, and doubling. That's the normal way. The word. That's the normal way. Hadavar. That's the normal way of putting the on a word. The was not a separate word. It didn't stand alone. It got smacked on to the front of a word. The word, hey patak doubling, hey patak doubling, hey patak doubling. That's how you did the. However, as you might expect, language is messy. There were complications. So, for example, the gutturals, the sounds you make with your throat, like aleph or ayin or resh or chet or tet. These words, I don't do doubling. It's not in my contract. And so, by the way, you don't need to know any of this that I'm doing here because the code will tell you that the is there. So in interlinearbible.org or Blue Letter Bible, when you get into the Greek or Hebrew, that is, it will tell you when the is there. So I'm telling you stuff you don't need to know, but maybe you think it's fun, maybe. So gutturals don't do doubling. So like ha'am, this is ayin. Ayin says, I don't do doubling. It's not in my contract. And so they tried to do hey patak doubling, and the dagesh, the doubling dagesh, bounced right off. And it ricocheted back and made a patak into a kamatz. Not really. I just made that up. But anyway, so this is called compensatory lengthening. Sometimes you got a long patak, a long A under there because, hey, if you're not going to do doubling, we're going to have to take up the slack here. Again, you don't need to know any of these things because the code will tell you that it's the word the. Now, here's the even stranger thing. Sometimes the hey would get squashed because prepositions, remember prepositions can be put on the front of words. And so when the preposition run and you've got hey for the doubling, hey for the word the, and then you've got the noun and the hey pops right out like a pimple. Sometimes the article got squashed by a preposition on the front. So here, all you can see left is the patak and the doubling. And so that's in and davar, word, and patak doubling is all that's left of the. But again, don't worry. You don't have to know this for Biblical Hebrew for the novice. We're looking at the big picture, and the code will tell you that there's a the that goes here. See the chapter that goes along with this video. So let me just mention while I'm here the unrelated question introducer. You could put a ha, or actually it's a ha. You could put a ha on the front of a word, and it said question approaching. That's just another thing that Hebrew could do. Notice it's not hey patak doubling, it's hey Katef patak. It's a little patak. It's a patak with a shava. So this is the question introducer. It's like a question mark, except it went on the front of a sentence. And it wasn't always there. Sometimes the context has to tell you whether it's a question. Well, we talk about questions later on in this series of videos. There is also a marker that said direct object approaching, and it's either ate or et. In Genesis 1:1, Bereshit in the bara, in the beginning, Bereshit bara means God, He created. Elohim is God. Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning created God. God created. Et hashamayim, the heavens. Ve'et ha'aretz, and the earth. So what is et doing in both of these cases? It's saying the direct object is coming. What is a direct object? The direct object is what receives the object, the action of the verb. So I hit what? I hit Ken. Ken is the direct object. I threw what? I threw the lamp. The lamp is the direct object. Whatever answers the word what after the verb, that's the direct object. So in the beginning, God created what? He created the heavens. And He created what? He created the earth. Both Shemayim and Aretz, heavens, earth, are objects of the verb bara, to create. And so both of them, they have a definite direct object marker because it's the heavens and it's the earth. So that's what the definite means there. Okay, so something also to know about in Hebrew. There are also particles of existence we might as well cover here. Yesh, there is. Yesh means there is, and ayin means there's not. So these are kind of particles of existence, either particles of existence, yesh, or particles of non-existence, there's not, ayin. It's basically vocabulary to learn here. Yesh means there is, yesh there is, and then ayin means there's not. So those are particles of existence. So finally, we want to talk a little bit about adjectives as we end up this particular video. So an adjective has to agree with the noun it's telling you about in gender. So if it's telling you about a masculine word, then the adjective has to be masculine. If it has to agree in number, if it's telling you about a singular word, it has to be in the singular. So if you want to talk about a hairy bear, bear is the noun, it's a thing. A noun is a person, place, or thing. So bear is the noun. Hairy is the adjective. So if bear were masculine, hairy would have to be masculine. If bear is singular, hairy is going to have to be singular. And they also agree in definiteness. That is, if it's the bear, the hairy bear, then you have to have the bear, the hairy. And they usually put the adjective after the noun that it went with. Now, this is when you're saying the hairy bear, the scary bear, the bright lamp, and that kind of an adjective use. There's another use of the adjective where you say, great is the Lord, and that's called a predicative use of the adjective. This is where there's an is involved, or some kind of an is involved, or are, am, a verb like that. So in general, when there was an is involved, a lot of times Hebrew wouldn't even write the is. You just had to know in kind of caveman, great, the Lord. And you had to kind of know to stick an is in there. Although Hebrew did have a word for his, haya. And so it could use that too. But when you were saying something like great is the Lord, it would agree in gender. So the Lord is masculine, so great would be masculine. Have to agree in number. The Lord is singular, so great would have to be singular. But they don't have to agree in definiteness. The Lord is definite, but great would, and it might come first too. But great, it could come last as well. But great would not have to have the on it. Because it's not being used as the hairy bear kind of situation, which is called an attributive situation. It's being used in a predicative, great is kind of situation. And so it didn't have to agree in definiteness if it was in that kind of a situation. So here's an example. Hamelech hatov. So this is the good king. Literally, it's the king, the good. But again, we put it in our Greek computer, and it comes, or Hebrew computer, and it comes out the good king, not the king good. That's bad English. But you can see these agree in gender. Melech is masculine, Tov is masculine. They agree in number. Melech is singular, Tov is singular, and they agree in definiteness. Hey patak doubling, hey patak doubling. They're both definite. They both have the on it. So that's the default kind of way adjectives work. Now, they can, as I said, you can have an is or are that's implied, and you have to come up with it. It'll be common sense. But here, actually, in this case, the adjective comes after the noun. So, hamelech tov. And this translates as the king is good. And you have to come up with the good. Literally, it says the king, good. Think caveman. And the is comes out of nowhere. But there's a clue here. They agree in gender, masculine, masculine. They agree in number, singular, singular. But they don't agree in definiteness. Hepatok doubling, this one's definite, but there's no hepatok doubling here. So it's the king good, and that's a predicative situation. The king is good. You have to come up with the is because it's not there in this particular Hebrew. Now, you can also have an adjective at the end of a construct chain. Remember, you cannot interrupt construct chain. So this is bat, daughter, daughter of. This is the wind has been sucked out of the noun, so it's construct. The daughter of ha-nevi'im, the prophets. So this is the end, hepatok doubling, the prophets. So this is the end of the construct chain, daughter of the prophets. Nevi is prophet, and then im is a masculine plural, the prophets, plural. Daughter of the prophets, the good prophets, I guess, because it goes with im. It's not telling about the good daughter of the prophets, because this is Hirik Yod Mem, this is masculine plural, this is masculine plural. What agrees with what? These two agree with each other. And they both agree in definiteness too, don't they? So it's the daughter of the good prophets. So daughter of the prophets, and then hepatok doubling, they agree in definiteness, they agree in number, they're both plural, and they agree in gender, they're both masculine. Again, the code will tell you these things, even though I'm kind of leaking some of the information you might memorize if you wanted to go the whole way with Hebrew. And so these two agree, it's the daughter of the good prophets. Okay, we end this video is too long, right? We end this video with how do you do an ER or an EST, greater, greatest? How do you do that in Hebrew? Well, to make it the preposition min, which hopefully you remember means from, you could use that. You say he is great from from her, or he is great from them. That's a way of saying greater. Again, we have to play a game. Hebrew doesn't do things the way English does. So greater than them would be great from them. That's the way you would do it. So how do you do How do you do a comparative degree for an adjective? You use the preposition from. Then if you wanted to do a superlative, that's the EST. How do you make it est? You might do there's different ways to do it. You might do king of kings. That's the best king. Or you might do great from all. That's the greatest. Something like that. Or you might do holy, 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 the trisagion, the three holies. That's a way of saying the most holy by using three of them. So you can see that Hebrew is not English, and it does things in a different way than English does things. But this has been a whirlwind tour of, sorry, did I say Greek? I'm sorry, I've got Greek on the brain. This is the way Hebrew does nouns and adjectives.